you're really boots on the ground, giving the information of what's going on in Nigeria. So my question to you, Charlene, is do you believe staying connected to the youth in Nigeria is bringing Africa closer to a Bitcoin standard?
I think so. And, and I absolutely, I think so. And I think that I think Nigeria has a Bitcoin story. Kenya has a Bitcoin story. Ghana has a Bitcoin story. I think when I went to the Africa Bitcoin conference, I was I was proud of Farida Nabarima and her entire team. I have to say that it was an all African team that organized the first African Bitcoin conference. That was a historic event. It was phenomenal. But I was just thinking, like, this is Africa's moment to shine. And every country in Africa is beautiful and remarkably different and has so many wonderful things to offer. And this is their opportunity to leapfrog the problems of the past to move toward the future. And so I would like to think that the conversations that we have on the Bitcoin in Africa show is closing some of those gaps in knowledge and encouraging people to innovate. Our goal is to amplify. I see myself, there's a really famous Black American writer named James Baldwin, who I love. And his job was to just be a witness. His focus was to be a witness of the civil rights movement because he wanted to shine a light on the people that were doing the work. And I see my role with the Bitcoin in Africa show very similarly. So we focus on the leaders. We focus on the CEOs that are running Bitcoin companies. We focus on the developers that are doing GitHub pulls on the Bitcoin blockchain. We focus on media influencers, the folks that are actually building community and driving change. Because sometimes they don't get their flowers. They don't get their shine. I think the work for me is so inspiring. It inspires me that in spite of every difficult circumstance, many of these CEOs are wildly successful despite, and it's wonderful. And they deserve to get just as much media as Jeff Bezos, right? Because they are building and grinding in the most difficult circumstances. And achieving success. And so that's the goal of the show. We have been very fortunate. I'm so grateful to all the folks that say yes to us. I am looking forward to covering more African leaders, and we're going to try to cover the entire continent. 1.4 billion people need to know. They need to know this. Like, this is the one piece of information that will change their lives. Africa needs Bitcoin and Bitcoin needs Africa. Like Obi Nwosu, who's the founder of Fedi, he had this incredibly inspiring speech during the African Bitcoin conference. And he said, Africa will lead the way. He is right. He is right. And he talked about, I had a chance to interview him for the show. And he said, Charlene, it's like Africa only needs Bitcoin and Bitcoin only needs Africa, right? These two things are the most important pieces of the puzzle for success. And he's right. And I think all of us have a role in making sure that happens in this lifetime. We don't have to wait 20 years. This can happen in 5 years. If you think about how fast everything is happening in the crypto market. I mean, last year was a tough year, but the things are happening at the speed of lightning. And so, I just think that we all need to get on board and give Africa the resources that it needs to be successful. From folks of us from the West, stay out of the way. Let Africa solve Africa's own problems. That's really important, really important. In the West, we have a tendency to come and impose our perspectives and views on problems without doing the work to deeply understand the root causes. And I think that's why the African Bitcoin Conference, being launched, developed, and executed by an all-African team, that is critically important. And because what they did, they built a really solid foundation for the Bitcoin Africa community. That's what we needed. Now everybody kind of has that placeholder, and we can connect and feed and build in our own individual ways. And that doesn't mean there's not a role for the folks in the rest. There's absolutely a role for the for the folks from the West, but it should be led by Africans.